This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. I just want to share with you the holy words of the Ramban. You know, there's a difference between a Rishon and an Achroin. Chavetz Chaim writes, the Divrei Rishonim are Bayarim Ke'esh. The words of the Rishon burn like fire, because they were Zahir on a different level than even Gedolim of later generations. So their words are much more powerful. It's a difference. The word, the Torah of a Rishon is mashpia on the neshama even stronger than the words of an Achron. There is a chiluk. It's interesting. When you learn the words of the Rishonim, you see the taras hanefesh that they had. You see the kedusha and the anivos they had. It's on a different level, and their words are payal on the neshama in a different oifen. So I want to share with you one hargasha. I think I spoke about it Shabbos morning, just to bring out maybe a little further. Just the difference between our attitude to Torah and the attitude of Rishonim, the likes of the Ramban. So we open up the Chumash. Okay, so are we apprehensive to open a Chumash? Are we fearful? Do we stand there in awe? Halavai. Halavai, we could say that as we open the Chumash, we're like, I can't believe what I'm about to do. And on the other hand, do we have a burning desire to understand the document? Oh, we're not that in awe of the book, and we learn it. You read the Psicha of the Ramban. He's standing in front of the Torah like a midget would stand in front of. Imagine if somebody had the opportunity to put on some kind of special suit and stand in front of the sun in close proximity. Imagine the apprehension, the awe they would feel. That's the feeling you get when you read the Ramban's Psicha. But on the other hand, the Ramban has such a burning desire to approach closer that it's infectious, it's contagious. Okay, so that's the Psicha of the Ramban. Now we're going to learn the Ramban's introduction to the Torah. We pointed out that Rabbi writes that there's certain things that every Jew has to know, just to be an observant Jew. So you have to know Mishnah Brura, otherwise you don't know what to do. You don't know how to pick socks out of the drawer on Shabbos. You don't know anything. You don't know how to get dressed in the morning. Mishnah Brura, Mesilas Yesharim, and one of them is the Ramban's commentary on Chumash, because the Sodos HaEmunah and the Sodos HaTorah are articulated in the Ramban. Okay, so to me this was very basic, and many things here that were chidushim to me. So let's see as much as we can. We'll try to read it fast to cover as much ground as we can. Moshe Rabbeinu kasav hasefer hazeh im haTorah kula mipiv shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. This might be a chiddush to people. Who wrote Sefer Bereishis? Did God write it? Did God write a document and hand it to Moshe Rabbeinu? No. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote Sefer Bereishis from the mouth of Hashem. Now the question is, when did he write it? And this is a machlokes Rashi and the Ramban. Just reading this, you wouldn't necessarily pick up on it. Rashi learns in Parshas Mishpatim that before Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote from the beginning of Bereishis until before the Torah was given, and then he wrote the Torah and the Mitzvahs after the Torah was given. That is not the opinion of the Ramban. The Ramban's opinion is, v'hakarov, to me, what is more logical, shekasvu b'Har Sinai, that he wrote Sefer Bereishis and the Torah and the Mitzvahs on Har Sinai after it was given. Meaning, when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, he wrote from Bereishis Bar Lekim till the end of Sefer Shemais, the end of the Hakamas HaMishkan. Why? Ki sham ne'malai, because then at Har Sinai it was said to Moshe, Alei Elai Hahara, come up to the mountain, v'hayei sham, and be there, ve'etan alecha, I'm going to give you as luchos even, the tablets, v'haTorah, v'hamitzvah asher kosavti l'hoyroisam. So Moshe was told he was going to be given three things: the luchos, the Torah and the mitzvah, and the Torah, number two, and the mitzvah. So let's identify what are these three things. Ki luchos ha'even, when we say luchos, yichlal haluchos, that includes the tablets, v'hamichtav, and whatever was written on the luchos. Kolay ma'asar sadibros. That's what it means that Moshe was given the luchos. What does it mean he was given the mitzvah, v'hamitzvah, mitzvahs kulam, all 613. Aseh v'lo yisaseh. So now the $1 million question is, so what does Hashem mean? I know what Hashem meant, I'm going to give you the luchos. I know what Hashem meant, I'm going to give you the mitzvahs. What did Hashem mean that I'm going to give you the Torah? What's the Torah? Im kein v'ha-Torah yichlal hasipurim etchilas bereishis. The Torah includes the stories. So now the question is, why are the stories called the Torah? Kihu moira ha'anoshim b'darach be'inyan ha'amuna. It teaches people how to have faith and trust in Hashem. So if you want to know what part of the Torah is the Torah, the stories of Bereishis are the Torah. Very interesting. Uberiditai min hahar, and when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain, Kasav mitchilas haTorah, he wrote from the beginning of the Torah, ad soif sipur hamishkan, until the end of the story of the Mishkan. So that means the first installment of writing of Moshe Rabbeinu was when he came down from the mountain. He wrote from the beginning of Bereishis until the end of the construction of the Mishkan. So now, when did he write, the last 3 books?
So Moshe already knew what will be happening in the future?
He said up until the Mishkan.
No. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, so you're saying, regarding the building of the Mishkan?
Yeah.
So good point, good question, Ari Leib. The Shavel on the bottom explains that it means a few months later, when the Mishkan was fully constructed, then Moshe Rabbeinu wrote from the beginning until after the construction of the Mishkan. Fine. When did he write the last 3 books? The Gemara HaTorah, the end of the Torah, Kasav B'Soif Shnas Arbam. He wrote the end of the 40 years. Kasher Omar, like Hashem says, take this book, the Samtem Oisai Mitzad Aroin Bris Hashem, place it on the side of the Aroin. Okay, so that means according to this Shita, the Torah came in 2 installments. From beginning until the end of Shemais, he wrote when he came down from Har Sinai, and then Vayikra V'Minu Advarim, he wrote at the end of the 40 years. How is this pasuk? How is the pasuk? L'kayach ha-sefer ha-Torah hazeh v'samtem oisai. Okay, good point. Apparently, at this point, the Sefer Torah is called a Sefer HaTorah. So for the first time, it's called Sefer HaTorah. So maybe Ramban feels that's mashma, that it's whole. Why is it whole? Because now Moshe Rabbeinu connected the last 3 books. However, now the Ramban brings a very important machlokes that everybody needs to know about. It's machlokes in Gittin on Daf Samach. What did Moshe Rabbeinu Torah Chasuma Nitna or Torah Megillah Nitna? Was the Torah given in one fell swoop, or was it given piecemeal? So this opinion that we have been explaining is the opinion Torah Chasima Nitna, that it was given whole, meaning whole means 2 installments. That when he came down from Har Sinai, he wrote from Bereishis until the end of the Hakamas HaMishkan, and then at the end of the 40 years, he wrote all the rest in one fell swoop. However, says Ramban, V'zeh k'divrei ha'omer Torah. Just the opposite. This opinion that we explained is the opinion that it was given piecemeal. That means he wrote it as he went. So he wrote from Bereishis until the end, when he came down, from Bereishis until the end of the Hakamas HaMishkan, when he came down from Har Sinai, and then he wrote the rest at the end of the 40 years. However, but according to the opinion that the Torah was given in one fell swoop, he didn't write anything until the end of the 40 years. But what that means is, it doesn't mean he didn't write it. It was recorded. But it wasn't called the Sefer Torah, meaning the Manda Amra Megillah Nitna. So Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai and he said, for now, this is the Torah. This is the Torah now. Later on, we'll get the rest. And then, at the end of the 40 years, he wrote the rest. But there was like a half a Torah before, and then a whole Torah at the end of the 40 years. That's the Manda Amar Megillah.
How can they learn the Durham in the Midbar? How can they learn Yavamas in the Midbar without the whole Torah?
They learned about Peh, but they didn't have a set. In other words, according to the opinion Megillah Nitna, when he came down from Har Sinai, the Sefer Torah that they had was Bereishis and Shemais. And then at the end of the 40 years, it included Vayikra V'Minu Advarim. According to the opinion Torah Chasuma Nitna, there was no Sefer Torah till the end of the 40 years. What did they learn? They learned Baal Peh. They had Shiur, and Moshe Rabbeinu taught them, Aaron taught them, the Zakanim taught them, the Bnei Aaron taught them. In terms of Sefer Torah, it's a machlokes whether it was given piecemeal or it was given in one fell swoop. If it was given Chasuma, then Nichtav Hakol, everything was written at the end of the 40 years. And he says in the bottom, what did they do until then? Everything was arranged by Peh until he wrote it down. So according to the man the Amar again, Megillah Nitna, Moshe wrote piecemeal, and at the end of the 40 years, he just sewed it together. So in other words, according to Megillah, so let's say when he came down from Har Sinai, he wrote from Bereishis until the end of Shemais, and then as the stories happened, he wrote it at a time. So they had like 100 different documents when it was all said and done, and then Moshe just came and sewed it together. That's Megillah Nitna.
So what are you saying? Everything was known, it was just the Ksiva that didn't happen? The Lamais, everything was known.
Not, right. So 1 second, not only, there was Ksiva also, it just wasn't a sefer, it wasn't one, wasn't a sefer. Everything was known. Yeah, Hakol Nitna L'Moshe Misinai.
So we're discussing Ksiva.
We were discussing Sefer Torah. So was it Megillah Nitna, or no, there was nothing written until the end of the 40 years. Again.
Storyline that was written, not the halachas. The halachas said there was 3 parts. There was the Torah.
Again, all the mitzvahs were known Misinai already. Everything was known, but nothing, according to Megillah, from Bereishis until the end of Shemais was written from at Har Sinai.
Not halachas-wise.
No.
Halachas were given. Even from
No, just Sefer, Bereishis, and Shemais were written according to Megillah Nitna when Moshe came down from Har Sinai, and then everything else was written as it occurred. Chasuma Nitna was nothing was written until the end of the 40 years. That Chasuma Nitna is the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Chasuma Nitna is the opinion of Reish Lakish. Chasuma Nitna is the opinion of Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan holds Megillah Nitna. Tosfos and Gita and Daf Samach asks on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says what? Chasuma Nitna. What do you do with the pasuk in Mishpatim and that says Moshe came down from Har Sinai? He wrote Vayikach Sefer Habris. What was the Sefer Habris? That's Tosfos' Kasha and Gittin. Meaning, according to Reish Lakish, nothing was written until the end of the 40 years. So what was the Sefer Habris? So he just wrote like a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. I'd like to get a hold of that, you know?
It's a pretty important document.
You know?
And then it was incorporated into the storyline.
Yeah. So this is a machlekes. Reish Lakish says Chasuma Nitna, and Rabbi Yochanan says Megillah Nitna. Fine. So now, so according to Chasuma Nitna, everything was written at the end of the 40 years when Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded, Kisu lachem es ashir azois, v'lamdes b'nei Yisrael sima b'fiyem, v'tziva l'kayach hasever atar hazev, v'samtem oisem mitzad Aaron bris Hashem l'kechem. Okay, next topic. Right now the question is, normally when a book starts, even not just a regular book, certainly, someone writes a book, they say, hi, my name is Shmerel, I come from Yehupitzville, I'm an electrician, I grew up in this and this town. You have some biographical information. So the Torah should begin, Shalom Aleichem, my name is Moshe Rabbeinu, I was born clandestinely, my mother hid me, and then after 3 months she put me in a little boat, and I was floating on the river, and a nice lady saved my life, and then my father offered me either the crown or something, and I went for his crown, and he wanted to kill me, and I had to run away and became the king of Cush. A little biographical information, or at the very least, the Torah should start, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe leimar, Bereishis, Ani Anoichi Baras Ha'olam. Basically, think about how the Torah is written. Someone is talking. Who's the someone? It's like a reporter, right? It's like a news reporter is reporting. Everyone should know in the beginning, God created. It's not coming from the point of view of Hashem, coming from the point of view of a third person. So who's the third person? The answer is the third person is Moshe Rabbeinu. So if the third person, right, Hashem is not, the Torah is not coming from the vantage point of Hashem. It's coming from the vantage point of Moshe. So then Moshe should start off, Vayidaber Hashem Elai Leimar, like Yechezkel says, Vayidvar Hashem Elai Leimar. Or Sefer Yirmiyah begins, Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chalkiyahu ben HaKohanim asher ba'anosais b'chelik Binyamin, nothing. So it's not coming from Hashem's vantage, it's coming from Moshe's. So give us like a little hakdama. Says Ramban, no. It should really say God spoke to Moshe all these things. But it was written anonymously, right? The Torah is basically written anonymously. The most important book ever written, it doesn't say who wrote it. Why? Mipnei shaloi kasa Moshe Rabbeinu HaTorah kimedaber ba'ad atzmai. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is not writing a third-hand account.
It's not his perspective on it.
It's right. Even though it's not coming from Hashem's vantage point, it comes from Moshe's vantage point, but he's not writing like a first-person account. I saw Hashem create the world. Kinavim shemaskirim atzman. Like the Navim who mention themselves, like it says by Yechezkel, by Hidvar Hashem Elai Lemar, Ben Adam, or like it says by Yirmiyah, Hidvar Hashem Elai Lemar. Abel Moshe Rabbeinu Kasav Toldos Kol HaDoros. Moshe Rabbeinu basically is writing the history of all the generations, Harishonim, and he's writing Adam, Noach, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahas, Amram, Moshe. He doesn't even say me.
It's more like a court reporter or a stenographer.
The Toldoy, so Yomikov Kishlishi Hamedaber, he's writing it like a third person. V'lachein Yomar, therefore it says, Vayidaber Lakim El Moshe. Doesn't say Vayidaber Lakim Elai. It says Vayidaber Lakim El Moshe. Vayomer Elav. Kimedaber Shnai Machim. Moshe is writing it Keilu, he's writing about two different people, even though he's writing about him and Hashem. Why? Umebneisha Inyan Kain, therefore, since Moshe is writing it as if someone else is watching it unfold, therefore he's not going to write his name in the beginning of the Torah, because he's writing it as if somebody's watching the development of history, so he's not going to write himself, Hashem spoke to me, because it's not written from his vantage point. Therefore, Lo Nizkar Moshe b'Torah ad shenoilad, Moshe's name is not mentioned until he was born, V'Nizkar Kilo Acher Mesaber Lav, and it's written as if somebody else is writing about him. So now the question is, okay, okay, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu is writing as if it's Keilu Yankel Shmerel is writing about what is unfolding, but it wasn't. It was Moshe Rabbeinu. But because he's not mentioning himself until he's born, and he's talking about the earlier generations, he sort of writes it anonymously.
Is this coming as a nevuah? It's not coming as a nevuah.
And it's all nevuah.
Like the Rav said,
it's all nevuah.
it all's nevuah.
Meaning like this.
Although the murkiness of different type of Nevi'im didn't exist here because of Moshe's level or whatever, but it's coming with Torah's nevuah.
Yeah, in other words, the stories in the Torah, what makes the fact that Abraham left his land and went to Eretz Yisrael, Torah, is because Moshe saw it Bas Baklari HaMeira. In other words, Moshe is not having a regular nevuah about all the stories. Moshe saw it Bas Baklari HaMeira. Memela, all the words that are used in the story of Abraham leaving, or Kazim going to Eretz Yisrael, it was even greater than real time, because when Abraham was going, it wasn't Torah. It wasn't Torah until Hashem showed Moshe, and he gave him the words to describe it in, and now every letter of those words has in it, not millions, not billions, mega billions of secrets. Every crown of every letter, we're going to see, incredible thing. We know our Sefer Torah, the letters, very few letters have tagim. Shatner's gaze, the 7 letters, Shin, Ayin, Tes, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, Tzadi, they have 3 crowns on them. However, we don't have it anymore. I wrote it down. Or at least I thought I did. There are 7 letters that each have 1 crown. There's a Sefer HaTagim that there's 7 letters that each have 1 crown. Our Sefer Torah don't have that. And then the rest of them don't have any crown. So each crown contains tremendous chidushim. Okay, so let's go a little weiter. So now the question is, really, Moshe Rabbeinu is writing a third person. There are certain events that are recorded, let's say in Sefer Devarim, that Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking first person. Like what? Don't ask. Moshe Rabbeinu could not have written Mishnah Torah. In other words, don't say Moshe could not have written the first books. And the proof is because in Devarim we see Moshe Rabbeinu is talking first person. So that's mashma that he only wrote Devarim and he didn't write the other 4 books. Right? Because if you look at Mishnah Torah, Shemedaber ba'ad atzmai, don't ask, you find in Devarim that he's talking from his own account. V'aschanan el Hashem, v'aspal el Hashem, v'oimer. The pshat is like this, right? That would imply, in other words, if Sefer Devarim, you find Moshe Rabbeinu is talking first person, that would imply that he only wrote Devarim, he didn't write the other 4 books. V'oimer, the answer is, ki tchilas ha-sefer ahu. How does Devarim begin? Eile hadvar mashar diber Moshe al kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all Bnei Yisrael. So even Devarim, it's not officially a first-hand account. It's also like somebody else recording about Moshe Rabbeinu. V'hinehu kimisaper Devarim b'lashon Imram. Sometimes you have Moshe Rabbeinu talking first person. No, the way Moshe Rabbeinu does it is, it's written primarily a third-person account, but as somebody starts to talk, it almost takes on a life of its own, and now it's written as a first-hand account. But we find that, if I could have a Chumash for a moment, we find that not only by Moshe Rabbeinu. We find that by Abraham, we find that by Yosef, we find that by Paroi, that all of a sudden it's talking first person. What? Paroi wrote Sefer Bereishis? Of course not. Pshat is Moshe Rabbeinu is writing Bereishis. But as the story is getting sort of juicier, if we could say such a thing, it's written in a style that now we're in the mouth, we're in the mind of Paroi. Paroi is talking first person, but not that Paroi is writing this. For example, so Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah. No, now Moshe Rabbeinu is writing it as if Paro is talking.
But that just can be him reporting what Paro is saying. We have to go on to the idea that if it's talking in the first person voice, it's always referring to the narrator or the author.
Right, good point. Or Yosef says, Ki gunoiv gunav to me'aretz Ivrim. Why doesn't it say, Ki ganvasai, he was stolen? So he's saying, because we're saying what he said. So, I hear it, right, it's not as compelling. But so we could really say the same thing for Moshe Rabbeinu. Va'eschanan el Hashem, and I said to Hashem. See, that's really first person, because we're not just saying what he said, it's him talking.
Well, once we establish that Moshe is the author,
right,
then it
makes sense.
Makes it straight. You can ask that question when he refers to himself in the first person, but no one would have a havamina that Paro is the author of the Sefer. It's rather the author recording how Paro said those things.
Right.
Yeah, but you can say the same thing if there was another person, Moshe, who didn't write it. If somebody else wrote it, he would also write it that way if he's quoting what Moshe said.
No, then it would say Vayomer Moshe v'aschanan el Hashem.
And Moshe said, and I.
Right, then it would say Vayomer Moshe v'aschanan el Hashem. The fact that it just says v'aschanan el Hashem, that means for sure he wrote Devarim.
Said the same thing.
No, by Paroi it says Vayomer Paroi. Right?
Why are we switching again? Can we say why we're doing this?
Good point. So Yossi wants to know, bottom line is, if Moshe wrote it, why would he write it as if he's an innocent bystander recording what to...
I'm asking why switch at all. In other words...
I guess it's a style that Moshe is recording, but the characters that are being described, when they talk, he writes it as if they're the ones,
Well, it still has to make sense, the whole thing that he's writing. It can't just be...
And he.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense.
It's interesting. I don't think Moshe Rabbeinu ever does it about himself when it comes to Torah. Like, I don't think he says, Vaydaber Moshe el Bnei Yisrael. He never says, and I said to Bnei Yisrael. But he only says I. It's interesting, Ha'ara. He'll only say an I did when he's davening for us. He says, V'aschanan, v'aspalel. He does say va'enal. Okay. Let's go on to the next point. Let's get to the why. Why was the Torah written this way? If Moshe Rabbeinu was writing it, why didn't he say, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Leimar Bereishis bar Alekim? Why is he writing it as a bystander, as a third person, transcribing what occurred between other people? Why doesn't he write it that this is what Hashem told him? V'hatam l'ksivas hatar b'lashon zeh mibnei shekadma l'brias ha'olam. Because the Torah preceded the creation of the world. Like we say, Davar Tziva Le'elavdar, that the Torah was given in the 1000th generation. What do you mean? Torah was not given until the 26th generation. The answer is the Torah preceded the world 974 generations. Ein tzarich loimer l'leidasei shel Moshe. The Torah came before the world was created. And it goes without saying that it came before Moshe Rabbeinu was even born. Like we have the following tradition. The question is, what did the Torah look like? What do you mean the Torah was written before the world was created? So what was it written on? A parchment?
Before it was created or existed?
Okay, so far all we said was that it existed. But now, the Ramban is going to bring a tradition that we have, an amazing tradition, that it was actually written. And how was it written? Shahoisa ksuva be'esh shechoira agabe esh levana. It was written black fire on white fire. That's pretty amazing. Torah was written black fire on white fire. Now the Ramban says at the end of the Hakdama that there are two dimensions of Torah. There are the dimensions of the words that we have today. Vayidaber, Hashem, El, Moshe, Leimar. Is that what was the way the Torah was written before the world was created? Was it written Bereishis, Bara, Elohim? No. Before the world was created, it was just straight. And straight means these are just names of Hashem. For example, the opening pasuk, you could read it Bara, Shis. In other words, you could break up the words, Bereish, Yasav, Bereish, Yisbara, Elohim. And you could read the words differently. That's a concept that the Torah is Shemos of Hashem. And if we would know how to break up the letters based on the Shemos, we could create worlds and destroy worlds. We don't know how to do that. Moshe knew how to do that. So basically the Torah has two dimensions. It has a dimension of the narrative the way we have it today, but that's not how the Torah existed before the world was created. The Torah existed before the world was created just as oisios, combinations of oisios. Eish shechayra agabe eish levana. So he says, and what was Moshe Rabbeinu's job? So since the Torah existed before the world was created, if when Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah, this is like Good Morning America, this is the first anybody heard of this, so Moshe Rabbeinu would have said, Hashem came to me and he told me, but this is as old as the hills. All Moshe Rabbeinu is doing is v'nei Moshe kisoifer hamatik. Moshe is just like a scribe, copying misefer kadmon from an early work, v'kaisev, and writing it, v'lachin kasav stam. That's why he wrote it anonymously. He wrote it anonymously because he's not writing it. It was already written before. But the following is absolute truth. Shekol HaTorah mitchila sefer Bereishis ad le'enei kol Yisrael higia mipiv shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'oznei shel Moshe. From the beginning of the Torah until the end of the Torah, it reached the ears of Moshe ke'inyan shenemer lahalan, as we say later on. Mipiv. Now later on means in the Navi Yirmiyah by Baruch ben Neriah, meaning the way the Torah was given to Moshe was this was a pre-existing document that Moshe was dictated, and he just recorded it. Mipiv yikra elai is called Rama'ela, from his mouth. It was dictated to me, all of these things.
If he did it all in one shot or not, if he already had it all beforehand.
Because then you know the ending before. Moshe
I mean,
Rabbeinu was living in the
presumably
way.
already knew it anyway.
He didn't know how it was supposed to be fixed. Maybe.
Well, Moshe Rabbeinu had all 613 mitzvahs from Har Sinai, all the details. In terms of the narrative, I don't think Moshe Rabbeinu was given the narrative of...
He wouldn't have hit the rock then if he knew that he shouldn't have hit that. If he's going to hit the rock, he's not getting into Eretz Yisrael.
Ramban sheet is in.
We had a cheat sheet.
Right?
Ramban Shita is Yesh Makdum Ochar. Ramban argues on Rashi, right?
Yeah.
Ramban argues on Rashi. Okay, now let's do a little bit further. A few more minutes. Okay. Now let's talk about the order of what Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. Now this is not, again, he didn't choose to write this. This is the way the Ran Shem told him. So what is he talking about first? He's talking about the creation of the world. First he tells us about the creation of heaven and earth and all their hosts. The creation of everything that was created. The upper worlds, the lower worlds. Now that included not just what you see, these words, Bereishis bara Elohim, but whatever Yechezkel tells us about the secret of the chariot of Hashem, that's alluded to here in the psukim of Ma'aseh Bereishis. Ma'aseh Bereishis, all the secrets of Ma'aseh Bereishis. V'hamakubal b'hem l'chachamim, all the traditions that all the sages have. Im toldois arba hakoiches shebetachtoinim. Moshe Rabbeinu was given all the scientific information of the 4 elements of matter. In other words, whatever any botanist, geologist, physicist knows about plants, animals, earth, Moshe Rabbeinu was given that. Now, in the psukim of Bereishis, included in the tagim, in the nekudais, in the trop, are all the secrets of earth science, biology, chemistry, physics, quantum mechanics, nuclear physics, everything, right? The DNA code was given. When it says Nasa Adam, if you could figure out the tagim on the words Nasa Adam, you would figure out you'd be able to clone a human being, create a human being. The DNA code, the secret mysteries of disease and immunology, it's all there, right?
That's not just the goy.
There's more information on a single strand of DNA than in all the books, in all the libraries in the world. One bit of DNA in your body has more information, more written on it, than all the words in all the books in all the libraries in the world. There's one strand. In the human being, there is 1 billion times more information than not just this room. You go to Cambridge University, you have Oitzar HaChachma. Oitzar HaChachma is nothing compared to one strand of DNA. And all the information on DNA is on the pasuk Nasa Adam. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu was given Kayach HaMechtzavim, the power of minerals, the Kayach Tzimchei Adama, the forces of vegetation, V'nefesh HaTnua, the secret of the moving soul, V'nefesh HaMadaber, the secret of the speaking soul, B'kulam Nemar L'Moshe Rabbeinu, it was all told to Moshe Rabbeinu, Briyasam, their creation, Umahusam, their essence, V'koichoisam, their abilities, Uma'aseyam, and how they act, and it was told to Moshe Rabbeinu how they decompose. That's also a secret. Do we understand the decomposition of matter? No. Moshe knew it all. And not only... What?
Why do you need to know all this?
Why did he need to? Why did he need to know the Torah?
Well,
the Torah is the information of existence. And it includes... In other words, now, everything the above mentioned wasn't just told to Moshe Baal Peh, it's written in the Chumash. So you say, where is it written? The Hakoil. It's mamish hafla fella.
First, 1 second. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. On the Tagin, right? Isn't there a Gemara that brings down that even Moshe Rabbeinu, the Tagin wasn't,
Well, now Rabbi Akiva was Doresh, right? Right. So yes.
So in other words, because he's asking it, right? So it could be that no.
It's Nagea to Torah, you mean?
No, he could be Moshe
didn't know this.
Didn't know the information according to that shita.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Here it's saying, the kulam nemar leMoshe.
Right.
Now what we're going to see in a moment. There was one thing that Moshe didn't know. Maybe that's what Rabbi Akiva knew. Maybe there are different things, by the way. There's tagim, there's kasarim. Right? You saw this yesterday. There's letters malufafais, winding letters. So you say, what's that? It's obsolete. We don't do it anymore. The Ramban Hilchos Sefer Torah writes about it. There are certain letters that are written in a twisted way. Can you imagine what kind of secrets are? We don't even write it twisted. But there are letters. He says, now, not only did Moshe know it all, he wrote everything. V'hakol nichtav b'Torah b'feirush oiberemez. Every detail of science, the dodo bird going extinct, maybe in Parsha Surah when it talks about the birds, there's one crown that bends, to the left side a little down. That's the dodo bird. Everything is there. Ukvar amru Rabbi Seinu, chamishim sharei bina nivru ba'olam. There are 50 gates of wisdom. The kula nimsu l'Moshe chutz me'yachad. They were all given to Moshe except for one. Shenemar v'atechasreu ma'am elikim. And Moshe was lacking only a little bit from God. Now, we'll end with this. I never viewed it this way, so, I think this is a very big chiddush. I always viewed, what are the 50 Sharei Bina? 50 levels of understanding Torah. You could understand Torah on level 1, you could go to the Shiur Beis, you could go to Shiur Gimel, right, like in Yeshiva. And Moshe Rabbeinu understood it on the 50th level. The Ramban doesn't learn that way. Maybe the way that I always thought there is some truth to it, but that's not how the Ramban learns. The Ramban learns, you know what the 50 gates are? A gate on plants, a gate on animals, a gate on fish, a gate on humans, a gate on Yidden, a gate on Malachim, a gate on the moon, a gate on the sun, a gate on this heaven. Each gate was a different world of knowledge. I don't think I've reviewed it that way. Ki'ilu ne'amar, what does it mean, the 50 gates? Shayia bebrias hamachzav, that there is in the creation of minerals, sharbina echad, one gate of wisdom, bekoicha v'taldoisav, its power and its products, ubrias semach adama, sharbina echad, and the creation of plants, another gate, ubrias hoilano shar echad, and the creation of trees, another gate, ubrias hachayo shar echad, and the creation of animals, another gate, ubrias ha'oifos, v'chem ubrias ha'shratzim, ubrias ha'dogim. And after that, speaking beings, to understand the secret of the soul, to know its essence, and the power in its heichal. Now, what's the heichal? So some say the heichal is the guf. The guf is the heichal of the nefesh. But I don't know, I'm inclined to think it means something more mystical. In other words, the soul's point of origin is Tachas Kisei HaKavod, and what its connection is to the upper worlds. V'yagia l'ma she'amru, and if you understand the soul, you could reach the following level. I could look at a guy's forehead. Ganav Adam, someone stole, Yodei Makar Boy. You could recognize it on his forehead, like the Arizal. You go to the Arizal, and the Arizal could tell you what Avera he did yesterday, what Avera he did 2 days ago. Somebody was Mazana, you could see it on him. So that's a high level of wisdom. If you know the secret of the soul, you could see how the soul is like projecting a certain aura onto the face. Gedola mikul on a higher level, shemakar b'chabalik shafim, knowing the witchcraft. Umisham yala galgalim, a higher level to know the secret of the spheres of the heavens and the shamayim and their hosts. Ki b'chol echad mehem shar chachma acher. Each one has another gate of wisdom. Shloi kechachmasa shachaveroi. Umispara mekubel hem al kabbalah. And the number, we have a tradition. How many different disciplines of knowledge are there? Chamishim chutz me'echad. Now, what's the 50th gate of wisdom? God Himself. So says Ramban, but you'll ask a kasha. But if the 50th gate is God Himself, that means the essence of God, then it wasn't created. Because God wasn't created, God just exists. So how could you say that Chamishim Sharim Nivru, this 50th gate was not Nivru? The answer is Nivru is just going on the other 49. The Efshashiyah Shar Zabidis Habar Yisala Shalay Nimso Nivru is not given over.
So there's only 49.
So really, only 49. There are 50 gates. Only 49 of them were nivru. Right.
So like similar to the 49 levels of like Duma?
Yeah, it's all five family.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been 50. It's always been.
Don't pay so close attention to the words nivri ki al haroiv yadaber. It's speaking about most cases. V'hashar ha'echad loy nivra. And by the way, and we'll end with this time for real, the hamisvar hazeh, this number, Ramos b'Torah, is alluded to in the Torah, in the secret of Sfiras HaOmer. What is Sfiras HaOmer? You could say, how many days do we count?
39.
What do you mean? But I thought the 50 gates are alluded to in Sfiras HaOmer. So it's very good. The answer is there are 50 gates. There are only 49 that are relevant to us, that we could connect to. We count 49. The 50th is Hashem's. Or Yovel. Kasher agad b'yisoid behegir sham b'ratzon Hashem. I'll tell you the secret when we get there. And you know what? It's up to you. We could finish this Hakdama next time, or we could go to Gemara Sukkah. But this is the first part of the Hakdama of the Ramban. Okay? Shkayach.
Well, based on this opinion, we can say that our forefathers knew the whole Torah.
How did the Avos know the whole Torah? Well, the Avos were not given this book from Bereishis to the end of Shemais. It could be, though, if all the secrets of the universe are contained in the Torah, you could work backwards. If somebody just wants to, you could work backwards. That if you could perceive, I'm saying, the secrets of the universe, if you could crack the code of DNA, then from there you could figure out the Torah. It could work both ways. Avram Avinu maybe was able to look at what Hashem created and figure out the Torah that it came from. Okay, well, hold on.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.